Tell me a little bit about your new techno album. What was the inspiration behind it?
There is a story to this album. The inspiration behind this album that I'm working on is based around creation story or types of creation story, a mix of some spirituality, just the idea of sin or the idea of two sides of a coin, one being sin and the other one being some form of redemption. And also taking techno elements mixed with some elements from Native American, Caribbean, a little bit more of a percussion style.
So it's like a techno album inspired by spirituality elements.
Yeah, definitely.
Awesome. Well, I'm excited to listen to the first track.
Yeah, here's the first track. It's called Blue Moon.
Awesome. I like the way it starts.
what is fruit. This is not fruit at all, but a skull that has turned around on the branches of a tree.
I do want it.
Then stretch out your hand.
So that'll be the first track of the album to kind of set you off into a journey.
It definitely feels like the beginning of a. It's like the beginning of a bigger thing to listen to. And it's great. I love the vocal sampling. It sounds like a Adam and Eve story, which does that like evolve later on in the album, or is it just a standalone in part of your setup?
For the most part, this is a standalone setup. This is taken from the Popol Vuh, which is pretty much the creation story that has a lot of similarities to the Garden of Eden, not eating of a fruit slash virgin birth. That's what gave me the idea, just to kind of explore, see what I can come up with. And I think I kind of found something that sounds, I think, could be interesting to new listeners, and maybe they can kind of grasp what it is that I'm trying to say.
That's pretty cool. Is for you making music, is there something about making music that helps you connect to your roots or help you explore your roots in a way?
Yeah, and even some of the music that I've been exploring, like there's is really interesting native indigenous people called the Terra Mata.
Okay.
I've used a lot of their musical influences because they merge a lot of their music and they're playing with their beliefs and spirituality, and the way they play the music is not always very structured because they don't have a lot of technical background.
Sure.
A lot of it's very percussive driven. I like that concept, and I definitely use that idea.
I think it's pretty cool as you're exploring different types of techno production and you're weaving those together into this really interesting tapestry of like, I don't know, like techno music that has like a deeper meaning behind it based on just what you're discovering, what you're reading in your spare time, which is pretty cool. I'm excited to listen to the next track where the story takes me.
Yeah, so this is called Invader.
Awesome. Nice. That's got a lot of cool percussion elements in it. Is that, it sounds like a lot of live recording on some of that percussion stuff?
It was actually me playing it, but it was sound samples on a drum rack, and it just used the keyboard and kind of naturally did that with as the track was playing.
Nice. Compared to the first track, this following it, it's definitely more aggressive. It's a little bit more driving. I think it's interesting coming off of the sampling of that's similar to like Eve talking to the serpent, which that idea is, eating of the fruit and the knowledge of good and evil, that whole idea. I like how this next track comes in and it's just this driving techno kick with these really cool gated pads. It really takes you somewhere. I like where it takes me when I listen to it.
Nice. Yeah, I'm happy that you caught that because there is an underlying concept which is shifting a frequency. So whether that be good or evil, that was kind of like the idea behind a little bit of that stuff.
That's pretty cool. Like, what was the most challenging part of making that track?
I think the percussions, because the kick is pretty much driving a lot, like holding a lot of that up. But I still wanted the percussions to be the focal point, but not sound too repetitive. I feel like I try to balance that well enough where it gives you a good rhythm that you can catch on, but also progress the track that you can go somewhere with it.
I think it does that quite well. Let's listen to the next track. You want to set up the next track before you hit play, though.
Yeah. So this one, it's a continuation of what you just heard, the Invader track. But I was playing with this idea of records.
Nice. Uh, that's a great track.
Thanks.
It's like it's like dungeon techno that ends on a spaceship. It's interesting. I like how there is in terms of like the structure of the song. It's a little cinematic because you have this like this very like patty intro, that's kind of floating around, and then all of a sudden you drop into this like hard. I'm just gonna say dungeon techno stuff. And it's interesting how when the melody comes in and then you come back to it, it's really it like takes you somewhere. I'm interested to know, since this is the third track in the album, how does this play into this Mayan spiritual concept that's tied into techno music for you?
Yeah. It's mainly about the concept. So it's the idea of leading into your sins. Like how deep within a sin do you want to go into?
Well, it's interesting because based on that concept, you have like how deep you want to go. You got parts of the music where it feels like you're down low in the dungeon, and then there are parts that kind of float above. And so there almost seems like a dichotomy of like in the dungeon, out of the dungeon, in the dungeon, out of the dungeon. There's almost like this conflict of where you are in terms of like the choices that you make based on these decisions of sin, this concept, the spiritual idea of sin. And in the track, it's like you're either deep in it or you're high above it. And it almost like in life, you're like fluctuating between the two. Um, because it's not just a straight line wherever you're heading, and it just fluctuates in and out. At least based on the things that you're saying and what I'm listening to, like that's the takeaway from me that I can glean from this.
There's definitely a duality of it all just being human, right? As straight and narrow as we can think we're going to live in our lives, there's always going to be circumstances that are going to either test you or put you in a situation where you have to hopefully not give up your morals or anything that you really want to live by. Like anything, we're always going to be put to the test or put into some scenarios that you either make a choice if you want to go in it or you want to not be involved. I understand that life or just being a human is not always going to be so black and white. There's always going to be this gray area that we're all living in, and how dark of a shade that gray is, it's up to you. It's in our nature. Whether you're religious or not, is kind of the idea. You're a sinner and you repent or you find a way to come out of it differently. That's where I'm playing within. So I'm playing within the aggressive, distorted kick, but having this interesting melodies that will uplift you here and there. I like that idea. I like the duality of the two existing in one world.
For sure. It makes me think of a Carl Jung quote, and I'm going to butcher this, but he has this saying about life is like a tree. So as high as your branches will reach towards heaven, your roots have to reach down towards hell. And so there is like a balance between how high your branches go and how low your roots go. And that is part of like what life is. It's like the experience of life is there's this dark side of you that is equal to the light side of you. It's interesting because it's like never in my life have I thought about a techno album in this way of like spirituality, duality between good and evil, and then even thinking about Carl Jung and thinking about your shadow and yourself of that, that conflict, that dance, I mean dance music between the two of like what life is. It's really cool. It's like listening to The Wall, Pink Floyd's The Wall. There's something deeper behind music, it's beyond the sound, and I love that about what I'm listening to so far.
I still want to make people dance, so hopefully this next track will still make you want to dance and not think about philosophy so much. So this next one is called Shake.
Right on.
Listen.
Nice. I love it. Tell me, like on the producing side, what are you using to make this track? What are the main like instruments like synths you're using?
I try to pretty much stick with as much hardware as I can. I do have Ableton as more of the recording interface with some standard returns going here and there, but for the most part, I have the Nord Drum 3, the Octatrack, the Analog 4, as well as the Prophet Rev 2. I like to physically move the knobs and kind of program the sequence through the Octatrack. So a lot of the tracks that I do start off as a jam session. It's always going to be a beginning to end performance, whether I'm messing with the drums or messing with a synth or a pad or a lead. It's going to be performed as I'm recording it. I run everything through the mixer, the Zone PX5, just so I can have that flexibility. I try to avoid programming in Ableton. I try to play it so it can have some kind of movement or energy behind it.
I like that process. Do you like doing that process because as you're jamming out, you're letting ideas come to you, and it's like you're discovering really what the track is going to be becoming or what it's supposed to become by just almost like intuitively just letting things come to you and jamming out. And since you're recording it, then you can edit the stuff you like to that wants to be a track.
As minimal as I can make the music, the better, because it forces you to really listen to what you're doing and to either have fun just by exploring or have a thought behind it all.
I'm curious, in your whole album, what is your favorite track? Is it the next one or is that coming up later?
Oh man, my favorite track will be the very last one. I didn't know what it was going to be. It was me constantly going back, recording a long set, going back, recording the next set. I recorded this within a few days, and it's been a few months, and I still haven't added to it. It's just whatever it was when I finished, I've never touched. And it was one of those tracks where it just kind of fell into place off the bat. And it's also one of those tracks where it's not your typical format. So I'm kind of curious to see what you think about it when we get there.
Totally, I can't wait.
This next one is going to be the middle of the album. There's a little bit of a hypnotic undertone to it.
Let's hit it.
Are you ready? Close your eyes. Take a deep breath, and while exhaling, mentally repeat and visualize the number 3 times. Take another deep breath, and while exhaling, mentally repeat and visualize the number 2 3 times. Take another deep breath, and while exhaling, mentally repeat and visualize the number 1 3 times. And you are at level 1, the basic level that you can use for any purpose that you desire. 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 You are now able to use more of your mind and to use it in a special manner. use these levels of the mind and these points of reference in a constructive, creative manner, where all that is good, honest, pure, clean and positive, and then so.
That was cool. I didn't realize that there would be like some sort of visualization exercise at the top of that. What is the next track?
So this is someone going back and finding themselves being home.
Okay, nice. I'm partial to this track.
We're safe.
Nice.
You're in this track.
I remember recording that melody, and that was a lot of that was a lot of fun. Like, you really produced this track that really takes you somewhere. It's got this cool techno driving syncopated beat. It's got this really cool melody. I really love the sampling, what it accentuates. It really focuses the track into the sense of home, the ocean. It really takes you there. Like, emotionally, I really feel like I'm at the place you're wanting me to be at when I'm listening to the track.
As much as I lived in LA, I don't really go to the beach that often, but being in this side of the coast, there's something about LA that just feels like you can just drop your guard and kind of let loose.
It's funny when you do travel outside of Los Angeles and you come back home and you fly back into LAX, you always see the ocean before you land, even if you're coming in from the east, or because of the weather pattern, you got to fly out over the ocean and come back and hit the runway from the other side. There is something about when you're flying into LAX and you see the ocean, you do feel like, I mean, I'm the same way. I mean, I've been in Los Angeles for a long time. I was not born here, but I've now spent half of my life here, and I hardly go to the beach as well. But when I do see the ocean, I'm like, oh, I'm home. Great.
Yeah, maybe that's what it is. Maybe it's an instinct or something within us that just calms us.
Does Los Angeles have anything to do with this next track?
This next track would be more of a wrap up of everything that we've experienced. It's not the last track, but it's leading up to the last track. And given all these ideas of duality, this next one is more of a, all right, like, pick a side.
Nice. I remember a long time ago when we first met and we started making music together, we shared a lot of music we had made in the past before we had met. And I recognize that melody because that's from an old track that you had. Didn't you write that in high school or something?
Yeah, I do have a sound library that's pretty much my old high school recordings that I always go back to see if I can resurface them for any current tracks. It's an old sound that I recorded and something that I've always really enjoyed, but I didn't really know where to incorporate it. So I think it was only fitting to kind of bring that back. When I made this album,
Yeah.
this was like a nice sound to kind of wrap it all together and kind of bring it full circle.
I remember that melody was in particular one of my favorite melodies. I like the way it sounded. I like the way it felt that you had written. And it's a real treat for me to hear that melody in this track in this album. It's really cool. And it also, I mean, not anybody's going to know this. I know this because, we've known each other for a long time. We've been making music together for a long time. And so we've heard a lot of each other's music, but it goes to show that there's a lot of like deep connections musically in how you made this album. And whether you know it or not, I think people are going to feel it. And I think it's very appropriate that that melody is in that song later in the album. It's like, in a way, it connects your idea, not just like philosophically, just like what you're exploring internally, but I think also musically, over time you grow as a producer musically what you do, but you're still staying connected to your roots of how you've made music as well. It's very cool to get this far into the album and then listen to an old melody that you wrote a long time ago. And in a way, it feels timeless because it doesn't feel old. It feels right here, right now, perfectly. I mean, especially in this album. So I love it. And I think people are going to love it too.
Yeah, thanks for saying that. There's some sounds that I don't really know where they're gonna fit, and I'm happy that something that I wrote 15 years ago can still apply now. So maybe that was why I wrote it. Like I recorded it for it to exist now, even though it's a 15-year-old sample.
Sure.
I do like that it could still fit within this album.
I love the idea too of where 15 years ago you wrote a melody and you had no idea why you wrote it. And then flash forward 15 years into the future to the present now. You're like, oh, I'm doing this album. You have this concept, and you're like, this melody fits perfect here. So, in a way, you just wrote that 15 years ago for now.
Yeah, it's funny. I did a little time jump there, didn't I?
Yeah,
Yep.
I love it. I'm excited to listen to the next track.
Oh man, the very last track. I don't know how to describe it. It does take you somewhere, and it's not of this time.
I can't wait. That track is wild. I love it. Um, the one thing about your music that I always enjoy is you're always going down one path, and then next thing you know, it's like left turn, right turn, right, and then I get back on that path again. It's definitely a journey, but I enjoy it. It's a great way to end an album for sure, and it definitely feels like an evolution from like where you start and to where you end. It definitely feels like it's all part of that journey. The, musically too. I don't know how else to explain it, but there's parts in the track. It sounds like double pedal on the bass drum, which I think is really cool because in the album, because it's purely not. I mean, it's mostly a techno album, so you're committing a lot to that for the floor basic techno rhythm, and you're building around that and everything. This track is really interesting because you really don't adhere to that conform or that structure. You definitely do it, but in the very like the city way, you left field or left road, like turn left real quick, and it's like double pedal. It's really interesting. Is that something you just naturally do, or is that something you're like, okay, now I'm gonna just go way bonkers on it and come back? Like, is that a natural thing, or you just force yourself to do that?
I have no idea why and how I made this track. I did use the Octatrack, which has a really cool repeat feature, which you can just kind of like tweak infinitely. Octatrack definitely helped me with a lot of that double pedal. I was just the vessel of it to be created.
Sure. I still feel like I'm in your album, right? I don't feel like it's not like I don't know where I am. You're definitely exploring different musical ideas. You have a lot of the Latin American percussion influence. It's embedded with, your love of techno music and electronic music. And you're fearless in the way you are exploring all this musically. You're weaving in the ideas that you're reading at the time. You're weaving in the musical exploration with all your gear that you're doing at the time, and you're trying not to edit it. You're just trying to let it be in its purest form and discovering it. I mean, you are editing, but you're editing in a way where it's like less destructive. And so when you listen to this, you really get swept away, you get caught up in it, you transport to another dimension somewhere else, and then it's done, and you're like, oh, damn, where did I just go? And with this last track, it really compounds from all the other tracks up to this one. I go deeper into that other dimension of getting lost into the music and the creativity of it. And it's really enjoyable. So kudos to you to making a fantastic album.
Yeah, no, thanks for saying that. This was one of those tracks that actually was the first within the album.
You made this track first.
Yeah, I would say this was one of the first ones that I was trying to figure out. And it was something new that kind of came out of me that I didn't know how to lead up into. I knew that I was going to end at this point. I just didn't know how the other tracks were going to interact. And I felt like this kind of led everything before it to be what it was.
That's great. Well, for those of you listening, the artist is Like the City. The album, what's the album called?
Creation.
Take a listen to it with your headphones or in the car. If you like techno, you like electronic music, I think you're gonna enjoy this take that Francisco did. I think you're going to like it. Like I said, like the city. Stay tuned for more music from ODYSSEY.LA. We are a label. We have several artists. We got different styles of music that we're producing here. So please like and subscribe and stay tuned for, we got a lot of exciting music that's coming out later this year. And thanks for your time. We'll see you.